and welcome to our third of four webinars where we'll be talking about HCI solutions. As you can already hear, these sessions will be given in English due to the Benelux audience we have chosen for this webinar series. I'm Remke Lauwerijsens, Business Development Manager Lenovo at TD SYNNEX, and I will be hosting all sessions. These sessions will be recorded and we will make them available on YouTube so you can watch it again or share it with colleagues. If you have any questions during the presentation, please raise your hand and we will unmute you, or you can use the chat. Today's speaker is Philip Renaert, a Territory Sales Executive at Scale Computing. Good morning, Philip. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. Thank you for the introduction, Remco, but also the opportunity to be part of this webinar series. The fact that we have this kind of webinar series is basically a statement that a lot of you are out there looking for basically a virtualization layer or maybe an alternative to VMware or to another hypervisor. And scale computing is one of them. So, and the goal of today is to give you a better understanding what we do at scale computing and for what use cases we can be a fit. Before diving into that topic, I want to have a look at what is happening in the market. We see basically a trend every 20 years that there is a move from distributed to centralized. And we see this move today. We see basically that we move towards a distributed infrastructure. So we all know in the years of the 2000, there was a massive growth in cloud computing. Names that we often associate with that are Microsoft, Amazon, Google, but the technology behind it, there is often a VMware associated with that. So they build these big cloud infrastructures. So what we see these days, there is also a big need for on-prem or at-the-edge infrastructure. That has different reasons. One of them is, of course, the boom in AI. Some things you don't want to push towards cloud and you want to process at the edge. Think about maybe video, AI on video images, etc. And a second reason is that, our president, the president in the US is making a lot of changes, and a lot of companies in Europe want to have their own on-prem infrastructures. So those are two reasons why we see a big growth on on-prem infrastructure. But we see the same trend in the market. Basically, VMware was being acquired by Broadcom, and they changed a lot of product strategies, but also channel strategies. And their strategy is basically aiming for those big cloud infrastructures. They do that by changing their products, but also by eliminating partnership with smaller partners. Or if you're an MSP and you're not hosting above 3,000 cores, then you cannot be part of a certain program. So really focusing on that big core data centers, legacy data centers. We at Scale Computing, we focus on that last part, which is that edge computing, but edge in a broader sense. That can be your core data center at your head office, can be a small at the edge location where you need to run a couple of VMs. And Scale Computing is that platform which is installed on-prem and gives you a cloud-like experience. So you will see during the presentation that I will often use the word simple or simplicity. That is where Scale Computing is built around, to give you a really easy platform so we have that cloud-like experience, however, running something on-premise. For those who are not familiar with the name Scale Computing, we are a US company. We started in 2012 with our hyper-converged infrastructure solution. And in the beginning, there was a big focus in the US. Later on, there came a focus in Europe. And certainly after, let's say, 1-2 years ago, with everything that changed in the market, we have a more brand awareness. And that has a lot to do with, of course, a lot of people looking for alternatives compared to what they have is, for example, VMware. As said, we are a hyper-converged infrastructure solution. During these years, we developed a lot of key partnerships. Of course, as you see on this image, we have won a long-standing relationship and partnership with Lenovo, but also we have partners for backup solutions, Acronis, Veeam, but also you're looking for VDI, Parallels, etc. So a complete portfolio to help you to get a complete project. There are more hyperconverged infrastructure solutions out there, but also more hypervisors out there. So what makes scale computing unique? First of all, we, as already said, we focus on that ease of use and simplicity. So this gives a lot of our customers an operational efficiency by more than 50%, and they reduce the overall cost. So that has to do with the time they spend to set everything up, etc. As you see on this slide, some of those logos are not are quite big enterprise customers like Ahold Delhaize, Coca-Cola, Northern Marine. So how do they end up on this slide? So they have, we call them distributed enterprise customers. So they have a lot of locations. Let's say let's talk about Ahold Delhaize. They have 800 stores, and you can see all those stores as really small businesses because they're running just a couple of VMs on-prem. And our solution can not only do a big data center, but also can go really small. So we give a hyperconverged infrastructure solution really at the edge where you would normally use maybe a single server solution. Suddenly we can have a hyperconverged infrastructure and they have maximized uptime. So for your core data center, but at the same time, really small, just to run a couple of VMs. And that built around simplicity. Our main product is called Scale Computing Hypercore. That is part of our platform. That is the main product, and that is focused around 4 pillars. So as said, we want to get rid of complexity. And you can say, okay, but VMware is not that complex. Well, if you see how many trainings you can do and certifications you have with VMware, it is quite a complex to manage. If you look at our partner portal, where I discussed later on, you'll see that there are just a couple of trainings, and that's it, because it's that easy to set up and to manage Scale Computing Hypercore. Second, when we get rid of that complexity, you will also have more time to spend on what's running on top of your hypervisor or on top of your platform, the real applications that matter. Third part is affordability. This is more relevant than ever because a lot of price increases. So a lot of end customers, partners are confronted with really massive price increases. So we want to give an affordable pricing. And we have also different licenses depending on the use case. So we have one for a big data center with a core license. We have a kit, but we also have an edge license or a site license for running just a couple of VMs. And then we have flexibility. That is with that name, scale computing. So you can scale in different ways. So you can scale within a cluster. So let's say that you have 3 nodes of the SR630, and in 2 years you want to add one. So then you can really add the new version or of let's say the V2 with a V3. You can combine those. So we have that flexibility. You can mix. We call that mix and match. So mix and match with newer CPUs, different storage, but also different models from the Lenovo portfolio. So that gives you that flexibility. And that flexibility is also true when you look at multiple locations. So we have a really great product to manage, let's say, 2 up till 1,000 locations, and that product is called Fleet Manager. So that gives you an easy overview of all those clusters that you need to manage. For those who are not really familiar with hyperconverged, I will not go really into the details, but I think it's really interesting to see where our product came from. So you to see those benefits. So because this is what we still often see at a lot of customer sites. So they have a traditional VMware or most likely VMware infrastructure where they have a virtualization running on top of those servers. Then they have network and they have a separate storage systems. And the thing is that when everything works, it's a good solution, but you need a lot of knowledge. You need a lot of knowledge of different vendors. because you have easily 5 different vendors in place in this situation. And when you need to do updates, for example, you need to make sure that that update is compatible with, for example, your server, with or virtualization layer or storage, etc. And when that's not the case, then it comes down to who do you call and what support do you call? Is that from VMware? Is that from HPE, or is that from your storage layer? So that's a cumbersome setup. So we create and hyperconverged. So we combine those layers. So we have that virtualization, that storage layer, and server layer. Important to notice, so that storage layer is integrated. I will zoom in on that one in one of our next slides. So it is really an all-in-one solution. So when you have, for example, your 633 nodes at your door with scale computing, it only takes you like 30 minutes to set it up. Everything is pre-configured. You can set up VMs in just seconds, and you have one single vendor. So you don't need an additional vendor for your hypervisor. No, it's scale computing is your vendor. There are no additional software licenses, meaning for disaster recovery, or if you have a lot of storage or not. No, it's one package. We also have in Hypercore, and we call them AI features, but I don't like the name at this point. But you could say that we have around 100 algorithms. And the idea of those algorithms is to make your life easier. So one of those examples is if one of the storage disks goes out, there's a failure, which is one of the number one failures, then our system will make sure that the data that is written on that disk will be rewritten again over the nodes, so you have a redundant system again. And the system is doing this up till failure till 50% of your system. So this is, of course, later on you will change that disk, but at least your system is back up and running and is redundant again. So looking at 4 of the pillars. So first of all, we have that simplicity. So you have one unified management layer. So storage layer, storage part included. So there's not an additional storage layer. It's pre-configured, and you can deploy that in under 1 hour. So you can say that scale computing is basically the iPhone of hyperconverged, because it's so easy and user-friendly to use. Second part is you have that availability. So you have those those self-healing systems in place, but also availability when your complete system goes down. We have backup replication features built into Hypercore, but also for disaster recovery. Then we have scalability. It goes from a single node up to eight nodes in a cluster. So you can easily scale, but also you can easily go for multiple clusters and using Fleet Manager to connect them. You can add older systems with newer systems, so you have that mix and match features. And then we have that affordability that comes down, of course, to having a good license from, as said, we have a platform from edge to core. So also we have licenses from edge to core. Second part is we offer a complete stack. So you don't have a storage system, separate servers, separate virtualization. So everything in one package, which gives you a better cost for value. Since the webinar series is about hyperconverged infrastructure, I think it's important to explain how scale computing is maybe different to other hyperconverged infrastructure solutions out there. One of the main differences is that we don't use a virtual storage appliance model. So the left side is a virtual storage appliance model. A virtual storage appliance model, for those who do not know that, is you have a separate virtual machine running to make sure that your storage is pooled and that your hypervisor sees that as one big pooled storage. Who is doing that? In the market, you have, for example, Nutanix, HP Simplicity, so they have their own VSA model. The advantage is that those vendors, they were really fast towards the market because they could use, for example, a VMware hypervisor. In our case, we don't use a virtual storage appliance model. So we have KVM as a base layer. We ripped out the storage layer and put our own storage layer on top of it and integrated that. So that means that when you change something in your storage or in your data, then the path to do that will be shorter because we will not communicate with an additional layer or block, you could say. Second difference is that a virtual storage appliance model, it consumes quite a lot of resources. In the best case, on the left side, you have 96 gigs of RAM that you need, and you need 12 cores. You not only need them because you basically need the hardware for it, but often these vendors have a core license, so you also pay those cores. In our case, with scale computing hypercore, you will need less than 12 gigs of RAM, so 4 gigs of RAM per node, and you need a fraction of a core. And this now explains why we at Scale Computing also have a really good value proposition for multiple locations. Let's say if you have 10 stores, 10 ships, or in factory plants, in manufacturing plants, you can suddenly use a hyperconverged infrastructure solution for running just a couple of virtual machines. Because you have smaller hardware, so it's lowering cost, less footprint, or you can use it for operational technology. Putting them next to each other, for example, to Nutanix, an Azure HCI stack, but also VMware, even when VMware is not using a virtual storage appliance model, their HCI solution, it consumes quite a lot of RAM, and that increases with the amount of storage that you use. With scale computing, that stays fixed because our storage layer is built in a different way. So Hypercore is your on-prem solution, on-prem platform, and it is an all-in-one solution. So that is the hypervisor server storage all-in-one, which you use for general applications as you're familiar with, but also for IoT, OT, robo locations, video surveillance, etc. You see on this slide that I'm also talking about disaster recovery. That is something that is built into that Hypercore platform and in the license. So what do we do for data protection and disaster recovery? First of all, talking about that part is that our storage layer is integrated. So not a virtual storage appliance model compared to that traditional model, which makes it a more secure setup. But the big difference is that how we handle snapshots. We have a really storage efficient storage layer, which allows us to create thousands of snapshots without performance penalties. For those in the call who are familiar with snapshots and VMware, you probably know that it's not a good idea to have a lot of snapshots for a long period of time. With scale computing, that's possible. And what we see at customers that they make basically a schedule for snapshots, and they're also immutable. So this can be a really helpful tool when talking about ransomware, etc. To be clear, we don't sell a cybersecurity product, but it can help you to remediate when those problems arise. That snapshot technology, we also use that technology for disaster recovery. So let's say that you have a production environment, a cluster of 3 nodes, you have a disaster recovery, and you may use today VMware and you use Veeam to do that disaster recovery. Well, we have disaster recovery features with that snapshot technology built in the license. So you have you can replicate just a single virtual machine or all your VMs. You have a schedule based per VM, and you can do that every 5 minutes. And this allows you to have an RTO of 5 minutes. When you want to restore, we only restore the change data, so that is a quite fast process. Of course, we strongly advise our partners, customers to go for a backup solution. The 3 main vendors that we work with are Storeware, Acronis, and Veeam to create a backup from scale computing. So you have production environment, disaster recovery built into the license, and then you have a backup with those vendors. So scale computing hypercore is for any size going from edge to your core data center. You have those failover and redundancy features built in because we have that hyperconverged infrastructure, and we have self-healing features. We have an efficient software block, which doesn't consume a lot of resources, and that comes because we don't have a virtual storage appliance architecture. You don't need an additional hypervisor, so it's all in one package. And the idea is that we have a really simple and flexible way of adding multiple nodes in the future, so you are future-proof to expand, basically. When we talk about a complete solution, we also talk about the hardware, the appliances. So together with Lenovo, we have a complete portfolio to basically have that total solution. So if the same is true, our platform is from edge to core, and that is also with these systems. So you have an SE100 and an SR250, which are more suited for smaller use cases or really that edge use case. Then we have the 630. The 630 is, in my opinion, a high performer where you have those all-flash systems, but also with GPU is also possible in the 630. And then we have the 650, which is a powerhouse system where you can have a lot of storage. So it can be for a backup system. It can be for if you have a lot of need a lot of cores. It will be the 650. So basically a system for every use case out there to have the complete solution. As said, if you have multiple systems, well, we have Fleet Manager. So Fleet Manager is a cloud-based platform. So you could look at it as a SaaS product. And this allows you to give you an overview of all your clusters. This would be if you have up till 50,000 clusters that you can manage with Fleet Manager. And there are a lot of things that you can do with this. This would be the tool where you have one-click access to hypercore, so to the cluster itself, which makes it easy. So no VDI, for example, needed. It's a single sign-on. You have a lot of more features, but what also useful is you have zero-touch provisioning. Zero-touch provisioning is the case where you have, let's say you have 10 locations where you want to do a rollout, and you can just ship your cluster to that location. Someone else with not IT knowledge plugs it in, and you can set everything up using Fleet Manager. So Fleet Manager, a cloud tool to manage your on-prem infrastructures on multiple locations. How can you move from an existing infrastructure to hypercore? So, but it doesn't matter if it is VMware or another provider. We have different solutions to help you with that. So, depending on the technical skills or the time maybe to do that, we have self-managed ways of doing that. So you can directly import a VM. We have materials, white papers to support you on that. But we also have, or of course, have services. So we have a full service where we do the complete migration of all the VMs, and that is a remote service. Or we can do a quick start migration service. And to be honest, that is the one that most partners go for. So our service team, they help you migrating one virtual machine. They show you how to do that. It's combined also with a service product. We do that, for example, with Acronis or with Carbonite Move. So that is a license that we sell with a service. So you can use that software to migrate your virtual machines, and you have the help of our service team to move one VM. Talking about our service and support department, we're quite unique how we do things with support. We have a net promoter score of 91, which is really high, the highest in the industry. And in my opinion, that has to do with how our support team handles these cases. So the big difference is that at any time of the day, you can call someone of support. Of course, you can also chat in the user interface or send emails, but you can call someone, and it is a real scale computing engineer who is trained for 90 days and who is also responsible to help you solve your case. So it's not someone who picks up the phone, logs the case, asks some generic questions, and then puts you through to a real engineer in 2 hours, 3 hours. No, it is a real scale computing engineer who will help you solve your problem. And that makes us quite unique in the industry. That brings me to probably a question that you had from the start. Yeah, how is pricing looking? How would that work with licenses? So we try to keep things simple. As our platform also with the licenses, so we go from an edge to core. So we started a site license. So that site license is aimed for multiple locations. So if you have 10 locations and you have just running 2 VMs and they need to have high availability, then scale computing will be a really good fit for those ones. Then we go to an essential kit. An essential kit is for your mid-market, smaller, medium business starting point, or for a bigger core data center and you just want to test with your first scale computing cluster. It is one license, regardless of the amount of cores, but it is limited to 3 nodes and 256 gigs of RAM per node. And that is a kit license. And we have that for 1, 3, or 5 years. And then we have the core licenses, and the core license is per node and the amount of physical cores. So those are the 3. That essential kit that is created basically to have a good starting point. So as said, it is for a 3-node cluster up to 256 gigs of RAM. Here you see the end customer pricing. So that is, if you're a partner, that is not your pricing, you will have a discount on that, of course, which makes it a really attractive pricing comparing with, for example, a VMware infrastructure with 2-3 nodes, because that what we see in the market, it can be a really good alternative to counter that. Probably already said, so where is our focus? So it's basically your core data center or edge computing. But to narrow that down, what are the typical customers that we see? So for that core data center, we're looking at IT teams who have a lot of tasks on their plate. They benefit a lot from less complexity, an all-in-one solution, and they want that high availability. And they also have they easily can scale. So if they have multiple locations or they just want to have that flexibility to scale in the next coming years. On the right side, we have the distributed enterprise. So talking about multiple locations, there is basically no IT staff on premise. So they need an easy solution. They need to deploy really fast and manage multiple clusters in a really easy overview. We are a 100% channel-focused company. Why do business with scale computing? First of all, you have profitable margins on our software. You can differentiate. The market has still a lot of VMware. A lot of customers are looking for alternatives. We can be that alternative. You saw the use cases. And we try to make also not only the platform, but also how you do business with us. We have a local team present in the Benelux region, and we are there to help you with technical sessions, commercial sessions, but also try to understand the financial situation of that customer and see what is needed. So to grow that opportunity together. How to get started? Basically, there's a QR code above, but you can also visit partners.scalecomputing.com. You can sign up. When you sign up as a partner, you will be a bronze partner. You don't need to basically click anything. What that allows you to see some marketing material. If you do that, one of my colleagues who is a channel representative will probably reach out to have an introduction. Once you have that introduction, you can sign up to be a scale computing partner. That requires signing more like an NDA, and then you're allowed to do all the trainings, get all the support from the sales team, and do deal registrations in the system, which is important so you have that deal protection. So how does that process look like? So you have that deal registration. It all starts with that one. So you're protected on that deal and you get your quote, and we can see what pricing is needed. We do a scale computing demo that can be together with me and William, who is my technical counterpart, a solution architect for the region. Then we have a sizing and configuration, a quoting, and then we go to installation migration. So 5 easy steps along the way. If you want to have your something to demonstrate, to demo, so we have multiple options. So the first option is if you want to have something, let's say hardware, software. So we have these demo kits that we can provide at a quite a low cost. So you have a complete setup with software on top of it. So that is a demo cluster of small NUCs that we have. We have a remote edition. That means that you can access our cloud infrastructure where you can play around with Hypercore. And then we have the Workbench edition. The Workbench edition, if you have, for example, if you want to combine that with already existing Lenovo hardware that you maybe have laying around, or you have a new demo system with Lenovo, then I can give you Workbench edition so you can install that edition on your Lenovo setup. So 3 different ways of doing that. That brings me to the I see I'm just 1 minute over time, so I still want to do the last case. So there are multiple use cases, but I want to avoid talking about a customer who comes from VMware and goes to scale computing, because then we will talk about the simplicity, ease of use, etc. So I'm using a different use case to make it more interesting. So we have a customer which is Zillertaler Gletsjerbahnen. For those who are a fan of skiing, so they are the operators of the Hintertux Glacier. And that means operating lifts, ski slopes, restaurants, point of sale systems, etc. So they are a winter resort, and you can ski during winter, which is one of the unique locations. They can transport up to 40,000 people per hour, and they have a ski slope of 64 kilometers of ski slopes. They went for scale computing initially because they have a bit of a mix of a bit of smaller data center edge, and they have a lot of multiple locations. But however, what happened is in the summer, just before summer in 2023, which is also summer is a really good season for them because they have a lot of hikers, and a ticket costs around 50 to 60 euros. They were hit by a ransomware attack. I spoke today about using snapshots and snapshot schedule, and that is what they did. So at the Zillertaler Gletsjerbahn, they have a snapshot schedule, and that went back for over 1 year. And they had a lot of snapshots. And when they were hit by a ransomware attack, they went back to a snapshot of 1 year ago with a C drive. And then they took a data disk from that morning and attached that to that live VM. This allowed them to take an operating system that was not infected and take data basically from that morning, which is needed for their point of sale system. This allowed them to be back up and running in a couple of hours, and that is massive because this is their revenue. And the interesting part about this is that they had a mix of scale computing and Microsoft hypervisor systems, and you can guess what systems were live again after these couple of hours. So I think that's a good reference case to finish this story. Please, if you also after the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to my personal email. Or if you scan the code on top of this page, or you go to partners.scalecomputing.com, you can register using our partner portal, and someone of our team will reach out in the next coming days to have a further discussion. I think it is time for Q&A part.
Thank you, Philip, for this great and interesting presentation. Before we go over to any other questions, I would like to share an incentive for all attendees of this webinar. I'm excited to share to you all here in the webinar that we have launched an incentive especially for you until the end of January 2026. If you manage to close a deal together with Scale and TD SYNNEX, of course, before the end of January 26, your local TD SYNNEX Lenovo representative will take you out for a local all-you-can-eat concept with a max of 10 people from your organization. So hopefully that motivates you to close a deal with and spot some opportunities with scale computing. Are there any questions? Please raise your hand. I think everything was pretty good, pretty clear. Kevin has a question. Hopefully it's a question and not a remark. Where are you? Here. Why can't I unmute you? Oops. I can't unmute him. And now he's gone. Okay, so no question from Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
So if there are no further questions, yes, of course, this will be shared to the attendees. In the upcoming week, we will send you the presentation and also the video. The recording of this will be posted on YouTube. So as soon as our marketing team has uploaded the video, I will share the presentation and the YouTube link from our TD Synnex platform. I would like to thank everybody for your time and hopefully speak to you soon about some great opportunities with Scale.